Hello, and thank you for joining us. My name is Shawn Verbrugghe. I am the Director of Corporate Sustainability Strategy with Hot Watt Energy. I am recording the NBWA 85th Annual Convention Seminar, Sustainability Practices to Increase Your Efficiency and Profitability. I'm a certified business energy professional through the Association of Energy Engineers, which is basically a fancy way of saying that I am a lifelong energy geek. And we'll start off our time here with this formula from the AEE. It's only taken me about 3 years to fully digest this, but it gives you an idea of how the world is realistically looking at sustainability and building efficiency. Over the next 15 minutes or so, we're going to get into energy management planning for your facilities and what it means to your business. To me, it's about two things. First off is risk mitigation, and second off is protecting your most valuable assets, which should be your employees and your facilities. So the formula here speaks to building commissioning. And most people have not been through this process, and I'm shocked when people are, because it's really only talked about in the geeky world I live in and within large real estate investment firms. So you can think of building commissioning as servicing your fleet, right? Changing all the fluids, updating the computer programs, changing tires and filters, basically keeping everything at the spec that it was designed for when it first rolled off the lot. The reasons you do this are obvious. First off, they don't break down as much. They're much more efficient. You save fuel, and you maintain their value. So translating this into facilities, many wholesalers are unknowingly sitting on facility assets that are out of spec, prone to increased maintenance. Sometimes they're past their usable lifespan. We call these negative carry assets. And building commissioning is just one pillar of energy management planning. So we'll come back to this in a few. During our talk, Molly opened the conversation by talking about why sustainability matters. So this is an example that already surrounds us today. Here we have a slide on Energy Star, and we all know Energy Star because our TVs and our appliances are Energy Star qualified products. Now, this means that they've been tested to prove superior energy efficiency ratings. Now, the EPA also offers Energy Star for buildings, which is a way to benchmark and understand the current operational efficiency of a facility. So there's some places on this slide here that require businesses to benchmark on an annual basis. And this list is continuing to grow every year. So if you reside in one of these areas, hopefully you're already on top of this. The importance of Energy Star for you as business owners and operators is that it's a simple way to have insight into your building's efficiency based upon the number of employees and its usage. And it compares to other facilities like yours. Now, if you have more than one facility or a portfolio, we can easily compare and contrast them. And we can create energy efficiency goals in Energy Star's Portfolio Manager, which can also show us the expected lowered carbon emissions and the projected utility cost savings. And so basically the way it works is once you make improvements and score over 75 out of 100 is the limit, or if your building's already super efficient, you can become Energy Star certified. Now, this means for you, it means that you know that your operational efficiency of your facility is at par or better. And you get a fancy plaque on the wall. You get a fancy sticker for your front door to show everyone what great stewards you are. But really, this is incredible news to share with your suppliers and your local community, aka your customers. So moving right along, we're going to speed through what we like to call low-hanging fruit and what many of you call slam dunk projects. These are typically projects, retrofit projects that have paybacks of 1 to 3 years. Your facility's energy usage is typically 50 to 70% refrigeration and HVAC, depending upon the age and the upgrades that you've made to your building systems. We'll start off with refrigeration here. So you all have refrigeration in your draft coolers, and a good chunk of you also have it in your CEWs. We'll break down the refrigeration cycle here. So you're basically pulling heat out of a refrigerated space on and off all day long, dumping it outside by way of the refrigeration cycle. Meanwhile, for folks with systems that have not been updated or replaced within the last few years, or a lot of folks will have systems that were overbuilt at a time because, let's face it, the mandates for temperatures have creeped up over the years. And so a lot of us have systems that are old, inefficient, overbuilt, and then these motors run 24/7 in the evaporators, right? So they do this to draw the warm air across the coils to carry that out of the building. But in turn, when you have inefficient motors or oversized motors and they're running all the time, it produces heat, lots of heat, and they use gobs of energy. So the more inefficient they are, the more heat they produce. And of course, they're dumping that into your refrigerated spaces. Quite the conundrum here. So I won't get fully into how we retrofit this system today. However, replacing the old motors with variable speed, electronically commutated motors, and adding a control system with sensors tells the evaporator system how and when to run based upon the refrigeration cycle. This reduces the energy usage by your evaporator system by over 75% annually. It also reduces unwanted heat currently dumped into your building by as much as 50%. This in turn lowers compressor runtime and condenser runtime and saves even more wear and tear on all of the components. Now, outside of the enormous savings that comes with this retrofit, at least a dozen of our clients have called immediately after installation and went on and on about how quiet their warehouse is and how employees can hear each other talk and how you can literally hear forklifts rolling on the floor for the first time ever. Savings and maintenance reduction aside, the improved safety and employee morale makes this definitely the first of your slam dunk projects if you have a little bit older refrigeration system. For those of you with the newer system, it could still be using old motor technology, so it's worth having the discussion to find out. And in some cases, older systems are beyond retrofitting, and replacing is the best option. And Hot Watt is happy to work with your refrigeration contractor to make sure that the system that's specified is as efficient as possible, and also to make sure that you capture any utility incentives that might be had for the replacement. Moving right along here, your second pickable fruit is heating and cooling, typically in the form of packaged rooftop units. If your facility has units on the roof that are over a few years old, you could be pouring out operating expense. Same principle, similar principle as we discussed with the refrigeration, only these units have large fan and compressor motors that run at one speed regardless of conditions, and compressors that turn on and off with hard starts every time. And an RTU retrofit includes a variable frequency drive that controls both the fan motor and the compressor motor, and has a control logic system with sensors that controls the speed and also obviously when these things are supposed to run. And this controls not only airflow, but it improves the comfortability, and it drastically reduces the energy usage and, again, the wear and tear on the equipment. The payback for these is typically 1 to 4 years. And so just another good thing to look at. Before we move off the topic of retrofits, we'll talk briefly about a not so popular topic in our industry. We call it the F word. The projects we just discussed are typically CapEx projects. However, I've seen it take wholesalers a long, long time to get these projects in their annual budget because let's face it, it's not something that needs to be done. And a lot of times the system's not broken. So if the concern is solely funding and you want to make a more positive impact, there's some solid funding options specifically for energy efficiency that are available in the market today that weren't before. The first is efficiency as a service. I like to think of it as Spotify, which is music as a service. And so you're not paying for the albums, you're just paying basically licensing, or you're paying to use them. So this is a vehicle that's used by many Fortune 500 companies and real estate investment trusts to attack their massive carbon reduction goals. And basically it sidesteps an extensive energy management budgeting process that sometimes takes years before anything gets done. And in a nutshell, we partner with a Department of Energy lender who funds the projects. We collectively guarantee the savings and own and maintain the equipment for a number of years, taking all of that off of your plate. And the savings pays for the project over a set term. Basically, it's a shared savings program. So like you pay 70% of the savings, you keep 30% typically. The second funding mechanism is called CPACE. So it's commercial property assessed clean energy funding, which is from your municipality. It's regulated by individual states and counties, so it's not available everywhere yet, but it's growing rapidly. And it's similar to the model above, except, again, the funding comes from the municipality and it's paid back annually on your property tax bills. And a lot of times this funding option can be amortized over 20, 25 years sometimes. So you get a really sweet net operating income boost right off the bat. And lastly is on-bill financing. We work with public and private utilities like PG&E, Constellation, Pepco, NYSEG, and more. PSE&G just came up with one that basically you get the funding from the utility for energy efficiency projects. And again, all of these, they include the project management, the labor, and all the engineering and all that stuff is wrapped up into it. And you pay it back on your monthly electric bill. And again, the whole purpose of all of these funding mechanisms is to provide a positive cash flow right off the bat with zero CapEx requirements. And you just sidestep that budgeting process. So we work with these programs on your behalf to retrofit or replace negative carry assets. And the nice part is that, again, they are immediately increasing your net operating income. And really understanding if these make sense for you is just a Zoom call away. Moving right along, we're going to refer back to the initial slide talking about building commissioning and also what's called retrocommissioning. Now, there's over 20 million buildings in the U.S., and guess what? Only 7% have ever received any type of commissioning. Believe it or not, even on startup. So there's tons of room for improvement. RCX, retrocommissioning, is the act of assessing a building that is over 5 years of age, looking at every building system, including the building envelope, and making improvements that result in efficiency, maintenance reduction, and premature failures. This could be things like replacing seals on doors or replacing motor belts or filters. Sometimes we look for systems that simultaneously heat and cool and see what we can do about it. We look to see if your economizers are operable and calibrated. Are there photocells or sensors that aren't functioning properly? Do the thermostats and humidistats need calibration? Does your chiller require tube cleaning or improved water treatment? Now, this list goes on and on. And just one of these items could be costing hundreds or thousands of dollars per year in basically wasted utility costs for no reason other than your maintenance team and your contractors are not trained to do this. It's not part of their jobs. Retro commissioning falls solely on commissioning agents and energy engineers. The good news is the findings and improvements from an RCX evaluation will typically pay for themselves in a matter of a few months. The retro commissioning process is not free unless your utility pays for this type of procedure, which surprisingly some of them do. And so we can figure out if yours does. To me, this is like digging up a buried treasure in your backyard. It's very exciting times for us. And for those of you who pay for retro commissioning out of pocket, it's not that expensive. It's almost always worth the investment, especially if you have a building that's, say, 10 years or older. And again, this goes back to protecting your most valuable assets, right? And just in the same vein of that conversation, I've personally worked with over 75 utilities in the U.S. over the years to help beer wholesalers take advantage of energy efficiency incentives. And guess what? Every single program is different. It's probably the biggest headache in our industry. However, some programs out there will pay for things that you couldn't believe. We've had utilities pay for up to 75% of the cost of the variable airflow systems that I was talking about earlier with refrigeration and HVAC. There are typically over 100 incentivized items on a commercial incentive program application. They're always looking for new ways to incentivize. Why? Because the money that makes up the pools, the incentive pools, is coming from your power bills, which means if you're paying, which means you're paying for them regardless if you use them. It's just a tax that's on pretty much everybody's bill. All right, moving right along. We'll talk briefly about advanced lighting controls and water management and building management software. I'm not going to get into deep here, but it's good to know that sometimes there's a lot of savings that is left on the table because facilities are lacking the right sensors, the right control systems, especially around lighting and HVAC, obviously, and water management. So if you're not highly advanced into these systems already, then it makes sense to have us look at it. I've seen just controls platforms alone reducing 10 to 25% of entire building utility bills. One of the major concerns within the beer wholesaler industry, and really all industries right now, is employees, right? So we think about it not only in terms of not only how do we attract employees, but how do we retain the good ones that we have, or all of them, right? And something I'd like to bring up is called the Well Building Standard. So this is a vehicle for buildings and organizations to deliver more thoughtful and intentional spaces that enhance human health and well-being. Basically, we're looking, in version 2 is looking at these different facets: air, water, nourishment, light, movement, thermal comfort, sound, materials, mind, and community. This is an extensive program that kind of goes through those 10 topics throughout the business. And working with the HR team, we get to the point where we are prioritizing health and well-being. And we go through and we put processes and systems in place that make your building a better place to work. And then we obtain well building certification to formalize all the hard work that's been done. And it starts with just a conversation with one of our consultants to see if this is a good fit. The end result of going down this road is that we help you market all of your efforts and the things that you've done to really improve the workspace. I just read somewhere that 90% of the millennial generation cares about social and environmental stewardship. So this is something that's becoming very important, and it's worth a conversation. The next point that we'll talk about before we wrap this up is carbon reporting. And so some of you are starting to hear about carbon reporting through either your beer suppliers and or your corporate customers. And I believe that at some point down the road, this is going to become very important to you, because these companies they have goals in place already to become more sustainable. They're public goals, and they're doing great things to move in that direction. Part of their commitment falls on distributors and their suppliers, farmers, and also retailers, in that they need to report Scope 3 emissions. So Scope 1 and 2 are their direct greenhouse gas emissions, and Scope 3 is indirect, which means farmers and growers, as well as distributors and retailers. In order to have complete transparency and be able to report your carbon emissions to a supplier or to a corporate customer, you're going to have to track your greenhouse gas emissions and report them. So we've vetted several different vendors, and we offer a software package that allows you to simply and safely report greenhouse gas emissions. And we do that through all of your billing, and it's a simple process to set up. The nice thing is it's secure. It's centered in a blockchain format. It's very simple and easy to look at the data, and it's just a dashboard where you log into a cloud-based system. And it's real easy to not only report, but to set goals. And tying back to Energy Star, we're able to bring those goals into your carbon reporting system and track them over time. And we can compare different facilities and sometimes find anomalies that can be just behavioral changes that nobody would be aware of because the billing is not typically tracked and analyzed. We typically sit down and work with you to onboard you, and then we take care of the processing of the information on a monthly basis, and probably do a quarterly review, at least an annual review. In a nutshell, carbon reporting is going to become more important as time goes on, and we want to help you to be prepared in advance. Now, this is the part where I'm going to manage to try to tie all of this together. All right, so we've talked about Energy Star, we've talked about low-hanging fruit projects, we've talked about funding, we've talked about retro-commissioning, the utility incentives, the well building certification, and the carbon reporting. And all of this plays into energy management and sustainability planning. The question is, where do you start, right? Hot Watt Energy has worked with over 100 beer distributors starting back in 2009. Some we've done multiple projects with, some we've Energy Star benchmarked and found that they were already pretty efficient. We are a family company comprised of a team of energy professionals, project managers, energy finance nerds, and collectively have well over 100 years in the building and contracting industry. Having said that, our process starts with a 1-hour free consultation with upper management, CFO, operations, and maintenance managers. And this is where we get a feel for where you're at, where you could be, maybe where you'd like to be. We discuss utility incentives, investment strategies. Do you have sustainability goals? Are you interested in creating some goals, or you just simply want to just start knocking down your operating costs. From there, we'll Energy Star benchmark your building, perform virtual or in-person systems assessments, and then basically we roll out a course of action plan for 1 year, 3 years, 5 years, really kind of whatever we get on the same page about. Our end goal is to help you get to the point where you know that your facility and your systems are running as impeccably as your day-to-day distribution operations. HotWatt can act as an extension of your business to be your strategic energy or sustainability management coach, fitting in where and when you need us. So you can feel free to email me if you have some time to kill behind the windshield on the way to work. I encourage you to check out the Efficiency Equals Profitability podcast. This is a podcast where I interview corporate and energy sustainability professionals to help educate folks on energy management and sustainability. And I want to thank you all for your time and your interest in improving the sustainability of your business. Thanks so much.